Hey guys, it's Michael Furlong from Rentroll Maximiser, and I have the pleasure today of chatting with a good friend of mine, Kirk Stafford, who has recently set up a business. We've known each other. Kirk, how long would it be? It's 10, 15?
12, 15 years. Look, I've lost track, Michael. I really have. I don't remember the first time we met, but it was at a conference somewhere, I'm sure of it.
It's been a long time, and we've run parallels all the way along. And just recently, Kirk, you've set up the property management coach. So well done. Give me a little bit of background, about how long you've been in the industry. Firstly, when did you start? When did you start in the industry?
In the Neolithic period, 1984.
So 84, what was your software that you were working with then?
There was no such thing. The software was a 3x5 inch card and a pen. That was about it. There was no software. Computers were still something that I think were just on their way in.
Yes.
But those are the days where I started as a sales cadet with a firm in Frankston that was part of a larger network, and I don't remember seeing a computer in the office. Everything was very intensely manual, and it wasn't until we got into the early 90s, I think, that we started to move towards computers. And in those days, we had the old Mac Pro DOS system on a blue screen and the little flashing cursor. I
talk to my kids now about studies when I was at high school, and I think we might have had 4 computers in the room for a class, and we all shared the computer. So you had your computer time, and at that stage, one of the sessions that I did. So we're talking about in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So computers were just coming into at that stage into schools, and but I was still I did typing. Yep. As because I was doing business studies, so I did typing.
Yep, that's right. One of the old Olivetti manuals.
Yeah,
I learned one of those too.
I think Olivetti had the ball, didn't they? Or was it the ribbon? They had the ball.
I think they had both. I think the ball typewriter was the electric typewriter. I learned on an old manual. So
now, we're talking
going back to my Air Force days.
We're talking today around new entrants to property management. Now, what I will do is I'll just mention again, because I just said to you just a moment ago, I'm doing Movember. So we're filming this in November, 10th of November, and I'm doing Movember. I wouldn't ordinarily be donning this, but today I am. It's a very, very good cause. So I just want to apologise for that in advance. But we're talking today about new entrants into the real estate industry. So you would have seen over your journey a significant change. What would be one of the things that you would suggest to a person today that's looking to join the industry? What's the one piece of advice that you'd be able to give them if you sort of brought it all down?
I reckon if I'd probably give 3 pieces of advice, really. Okay. If they all interlink to a certain extent. First one would be to keep learning. Just continually improve your knowledge. And it doesn't matter whether it's real estate related or whether it's something completely different. We could be talking human dynamics. We could be talking psychology. We could be, there's a whole range of things, but just keep your mind busy and be prepared to continue to learn. I mean, we don't just get to a certain point and go, that's it, we know everything, because we never will.
And just on that, I'll often say, because I spend a fair bit of time, we're both in the same sort of space, but I spend a fair bit of time in offices, and I say, I've been doing this now for 20 plus years, and I know that much. Mm-hmm. So if you've been in the real estate industry for the last 18 months, you're not really even registering.
That's right.
Things change so quickly. Property management software changes, new apps change, technology, storage, customer services, everything changes. So that's number 1. What was number 2? And
number 2 would probably tie into that, and that's to find yourself a mentor. Yeah. Find someone that you can talk to on an ongoing basis. And it's not just I'm talking outside of the coaching sphere. I go between the two. But a mentor is someone who will help you longer term with your career. It's a different thing. Coaching is very much outcome driven. You go to learn a particular set of skills, and then you can keep going with that if you want to. But mentoring itself, that's somebody who can help guide you through your career as you advance. So it doesn't matter where you start. in the industry, because you will advance. You will go further than where you are. And you were talking a minute ago about things like software and apps and technology and legislation and regulations. I mean, we've just gone through one of the biggest upheavals that hopefully we'll ever face.
Yeah.
But we've been forced to adapt, and there have been people that probably haven't adapted as quickly, that have lagged behind, but there have been people that have been on the front foot of it, and they're the ones that I'm seeing that are actually really progressing their companies now and really progressing their careers. But in tying in with that learning, they've also got someone in the background who's helping them to plan the next stages and plan the next steps.
So no two agencies are the same. Every office is different. And that's the thing which, again, from a new entrance point of view, if you're looking at that very first job, that very, very first one, that can be the catapult to a good career, but it can also, unfortunately, it can hold you back. So if you end up choosing the wrong type of business to start with, you want to work in a business that's well structured, you want to work in a business that's got good systems and someone who's going to guide you.
That's right. And someone within the, and it doesn't necessarily need to be one of the directors, but it generally is, but someone within there who can show some leadership, who can help you along the way. And even if it's not within that company, find somebody outside of it.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people around who are hugely generous with their time. I've lost track of the number of people that I've been able to go to over time and just ask little questions. Some of them have been hugely beneficial to me to get to where I am now. Yeah. Others have certainly helped as well. But there's no shortage of people in this industry that are willing to help. They're willing to impart their experience and their knowledge, just particularly to those who show the enthusiasm to seek them out. Because sometimes they're hiding in plain sight. Sometimes you've got to actually go out and find them.
What a great point on that one, Kirk. You just said, and I think sometimes for people that are just joining a brand new industry, you have to be able to go and seek out those mentors, but you have to show the initiative and you go and seek the information rather than waiting and sitting back and saying, oh, woe is me. The industry hasn't, I haven't been taught. And the number of times I've been told I haven't been taught that. Well, go and learn it. If you think there's an area, you go and learn it. So that's two pieces of great advice. What's the third one that you would?
Build a very strong network. And it ties in a lot with the first two. But your network will be your principal's place of support. It will also be your principal source of business. If you're in a business development role, in whichever sphere you're in, whether we're talking about sales for listings, whether we're talking property management for new managements, whether we're talking about, pardon me, OCs for future owners corporation strata management, build yourself a very, very strong network, both within and outside of the industry, and work them and be available to them as well to provide guidance, advice, and even mentorship to some of them. I think there'd be the three areas. If somebody had sat me down, if there'd been three pieces of advice that I really wanted to have had at the time that I started, they would probably be the three.
They're brilliant. They're brilliant. Particularly, look, I think they're all very good, but the network aspect of that is, if we just touch on that for a moment, particularly with sales cadets or brand new people joining the sales industry, I suggest to people that your first 5 years are the hardest in as a salesperson. After that, it becomes a little bit easier. And there's a couple of reasons for firstly, you've got to cut your teeth. Nobody knows who you are. And people like to do business with people they like, and then they know they can trust. And so you need to be around for a while. So if you've been in a business for 5 years, you've developed a name, a brand, and that's the one thing that you own. You own your integrity, but you also own your own brand. So even though you go to different offices, you own your own brand.
That's correct.
Maybe I'll go back to, as part of your role over the journey, have you been through the process of interviewing people? It's part of your role for new roles. Is that something that you've done a lot of?
Yes.
So what stands out for you when you're going through the interview process? Because I've got some really funny stories of some silly ways that the candidates have acted in interviews, which they're very, very quick interviews because you're just looking at them, I couldn't do business with you. what are the things that you would suggest if someone's going for an interview? Of course, you want to show up on time, be well spoken, articulate. What are the other things? First, you've got to get to an interview.
Well, firstly, you've got to get to that. You've got to get through that initial weeding out stage, and it's very
let's
easy.
Go that. Well, let's go back to that one. So when you get, let's just say, for example, today you are working for a client and you are looking for either a sales cadet, brand new, a leasing consultant, a property management assistant, and you put an ad on Seek, which tends to be the main place. Roughly how many applications do you think you would get for a brand new entry? 60, 70?
Easy. It could be more. It depends. And out of those, you sift through them very, very quickly, because some
How
of
do
them
you do that?
Well, firstly, you look at where they've been and what their quals are. If they haven't got the basic qualifications to start with, and they haven't had a really decent grounding in some form of customer service type role.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about working behind the counter, although that can sometimes be of help. I'm talking about some good long-term client-facing, customer-facing roles.
Yes.
Because this is very intensely, this is a people business. This is a people-centric business, and we've got to understand that. People we bring into the businesses have got to be able and capable of dealing with people at their rawest and their most emotional. Yeah. Because at some point it's going to happen, and when they're first making contact with an agent, whether we're talking sales, leasing, OC, whatever it is, that's when they are at their rawest.
Yes.
That's also when they're at their
most
least
vulnerable.
Trusting. Yes, yeah, that's right. But they're also at their least trusting. So you've got to be able to build that rapport with someone very, very, very quickly. Now, in order for that to happen, for you to get to that point to start with, through the application phase, some of my best candidates have always made contact with me directly first.
Okay. So they've made contact?
That's right. They've not just emailed through their application through whatever portal it is. They've picked up the phone. They've found me, picked up the phone and said, hey, listen, just wanted to have a brief chat to you, introduce myself. I'm sending through, or I have sent through my application. When it comes through, if you could have a look at it for me, I'd be really, really grateful.
So what you're doing over the phone is that you're now looking for their communication skills, their initiative. But also, what's your view on photograph on a CV or no photograph? Do you have a view?
I'm a visual sort of individual, and I like to see who I'm talking to or I'm considering.
Yes.
It's purely a way of assessing, I think, first of all, what their personal presentation is going to be like right off the bat.
Sure, absolutely. And that to me is important as well. Yeah.
And it goes to what you were talking about before with basic interview skills. Turning up on time and speaking well. I think you've got to be dressed well. So I've seen people walk in and make some horrible mistakes in interviews. They'll walk in a discount outlet business shirt and scruffy shoes, and you think you're not going to get it.
No,
you've got to. That's your first impression.
Yeah.
And if you can't master that, well, the rest of it's not going to go well.
When you're interviewing, do you use a standard set of questions or do you just flow?
I have a basic structure, and there are obviously the questions you want to ask that derive from the CV, but I generally tend to also like to pull out of the candidate as much information as I can about what their particular wants and goals are, how they see that the role would look to them, what sort of commitment they've got to it, what sort of support background they have. So it tends to flow, but there is a structure to it where there's set questions that you'll work through and just tick off as you go down the list in a mental way, rather than just sort of sit there with a sheet of paper in front of you taking notes.
It's been a while since I've had my own agency, Kirk, but one of the things that I did whenever I was recruiting was I would send out, once I've shortlisted the applicants, I would send out the full position description.
Mm-hmm.
I would send that out and I would say to the people, you need to know, you need to read it. You need to check, and this is part of the email that I would send through, read the position description, because we'll be questioning that through the interview.
Mhm.
Also, you need to study our website. And the reasons why I did that was, and then please come back to me if you still feel that you would like an interview. So mine was in two parts. So I would send out the position description via email. I would then ask the applicant to say, read the position description, check out our website, and then come back to me if you would still like an opportunity for an interview. So in part, I'm going through the application process and then getting them to say, yes, I still feel. And the reason why I did that, Kirk, is because so many people are expecting just to get an interview and show up on the day. I want to know whether the person's follow instruction. So when I'm doing the interview, the very first thing that one of the very first questions, apart from the niceties, was, tell me a little bit about what you picked up from our website and how many staff do we have?
That's a good point. That's a really good question. Yeah.
And I would unfortunately catch out is what I'm looking for, a lot of people, because then they would talk to me about, oh no, I'm busy, I didn't get a chance to read it, or oh, you know, I saw your profile and that was it. And it's like, so what I'm looking for is, if you're coming for an interview, the interview starts for me, the application process starts the moment you send me your interest.
Yep.
Because I'm then going to
getting them to self-select.
Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of people would lose out. They'd miss out on that. And the other one would then be, most of the interview was around, so tell me, Kirk, what did you learn from the position description? Was there anything in there that you needed me to explain? No? Okay, good. Then tell me what I mean by this clause. And I was like, I didn't read it. You know, like, so again, what I'm looking for, if I'm going to invest, and I'm sure you're the same, if I'm going to invest my time into a brand new entrant, I want to make sure that their career is in this game. I want to make sure that I'm finding the real rough diamond. So if we've got 50, 60, 70 people applying, I'm looking for the one in there, maybe the two. It might not be anyone. But I think as part of the process, they need to be able to show their points of difference. What else would you say, mate? So would you suggest this is a good industry?
I love the industry. After this amount of time in it, it's in my blood. I know that, and I was warned about this when I first started. I was warned that once you get in, it becomes just a part of your personality. I reckon it's an incredibly rewarding industry, not just financially, but I think personally as well. You've got immense opportunities for growth of your career, for also growth of you as an individual. And it's one of those things that I look at. That there's very few industries that I know that can afford you the sorts of opportunities that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's just in terms of personal connections, I'm sure you would have been the same. The number of people that we've had daily interactions with over a period of a transaction, whether it's the period of a sales process, whether it's a period of a lease, whether it's a period of an overall management of a property, that cover the entire spectrum of society. I've dealt with people who are really in pretty dire circumstances financially at times, who fortunately have managed to get themselves into a position where they grow out of them. And I've also dealt with people who are at the highest levels of industry, and there's reward in every one of those interactions. Like I said, there's not an industry I can think of that's like it, because you actually get to share part of their life with them.
Absolutely.
Objectively and as an advisor. And hopefully is a very trusted advisor, which creates a different relationship altogether. You were talking before about people knowing you and trusting you before, or knowing you and liking you before they do business with you. You also need to have them trust you. But what I think you really want them to do, and this only happens with the trust, what you really want them to do is refer people to you, which goes to what I was talking about before with networking. You want not just that one transaction. This is what I say to a lot of my clients when they say, oh, it's just all about fees. I said, no, with me, it's not so much about the fee. It's about the next client that I'm dealing with that you've spoken to and sent to me, or the next time that you want to transact in real estate in whatever way it is. And I've got clients that have followed me around for years and years. I've got one at the moment where I've purchased 2 properties for them, and I'm about to sell another one for them, and that's over a long period of time. Now, you don't get that out of short-termism.
No, it's a definite trust. Can you just maybe just quickly go through as we wrap up, Kirk? Maybe go through the and there'll be quite a few, I imagine, the different roles that you've had throughout your career. Not so much the names of the companies, but just the different roles. And the reasons why I just want to highlight to anyone that's watching the fact that I'm a firm believer that you become a real estate agent. That's the criteria. And then from there, it's a real open minefield as to what the role is. And along the way, and we were just talking before we went and started recording, that there are roles that are in place now, particularly like buyer's advocate or business development manager, which when you started were not roles that were around. So there is evolution there. But what are the roles as you go through? Maybe just sort of ring them off for me as we wrap up.
Well, okay. I started off as a sales, what we now consider a sales cadet.
Yes.
I went through a two-week training course with this particular firm, and had basically got bashed over the head about customer service communication, which was great. It was a very, very good ground. I started as a sales cadet, then became a salesperson of my own right. Filled that role for 6 or 7 years, took over a sales team and ran a branch for another multi-office network down on the Mornington Peninsula. Then went to work as a salesperson again for another company in a different area to give me more opportunity. Left that role, but stayed within the company and became their property manager.
Okay.
And as a property manager, and this is going back to 1992, as a property manager then, you were everything. You were the leasing consultant, you were the business development manager, you were the property manager, you were the maintenance manager, you were the trust accountant. You did the lot.
Yeah.
So there was no segregation of the role. You were supposed to be across the whole thing.
Since then, just on that as well, I'm sure you'll get a kick out of this. Those were the days where tenants used to come and pay their rent into the office, and then you would be taking your money up to the bank before 4 o'clock each day, or 5 on a Friday, where you'd go through and you'd stand in line and you'd do your deposit, whether it was at the bank or the post office or whatever it may be, you'd be doing your deposits. But tenants would be coming in and paying cash on a weekly basis. So
the systems then were still intensely manual because everything was in triple carbon, and they were taken off one sheet and put onto another sheet in the ledger card.
Kalamazoo?
Yeah, Kalamazoo. Yeah, Kalamazoo, ledger cards to the trust accounting system, which have just started to come in, which is the MS-DOS. Yeah. And it was intensely different. Dot matrix printers, Michael.
Yes.
Tractor feed.
With the holes in the side. So you've gone into property management?
Gone into property management, covered the entire spectrum of property management. Then in the from there, I went on and opened my own property management niche in business. It was specifically property management, and that was in the days when it was unheard of. Sure. Everybody else was still very generalist, and I guess from there, somebody said to me a while ago, "Oh, you were one of the first disruptors." And I'd never thought of it as that at the time, but I took that company as it was as a small company, merged it into a larger company where we ended up with close to 3,000 managements and 20 staff, and then from there went on. I've been run several other companies for other people as a general manager, as head department head, as consultant, and from there, I also thought, well, I'm going to go out as a buyer's advocate and vendor advocate, which I still do quite a bit of. But I'm also now looking at my next role, which is the one that we've just been talking about in property management, in coaching, mentoring, and some training, because that's the way that the industry goes. So this is what you were talking about before with the opportunities that are allowed to. Your career has been very similar. I mean, you started off in very much the same sort of way.
Well, I started out as project marketing, but then went into buyer's advocacy. So I've sort of circled all the way around. You're right. It's an opportunity with your career. So I guess we're probably two old buggers that have been in the industry. I look at now when I first started, there were a lot of the older guys that were around. I used to think, geez, they've been around forever. I think I've become one of them.
Yeah, I think we both have.
I won't say we're grumpy, because we're not, but we're incredibly passionate about the industry. And Kirk, it's been wonderful chatting with you today. Hopefully the new entrants have as much fun, because it is fun. It's a fun industry.
Oh, yeah.
It's provided a wonderful opportunity for myself and my family, and I'm sure for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great industry to be a part of. For those who want to make a difference and who want to work at it.
But it's a matter, and you're right. You want to work at it, because there needs to be a high level of commitment.
Yeah.
Because without it, it's just a job, and this can be far more than just a job.
Well, again, I'll probably wrap up on this one, Kirk. I reckon if it's just a job, go and do something different, because it'll be a lot easier and there'll be more money in it. Because you won't succeed. Because if it's just a job, it'll be hard, it'll be arduous, and the pressure will get to you. If it's a vocation, if it's what it is that you feel as part of your the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, then in whatever capacity, and that's why I asked you, what the different roles were that you've done along the way. Fundamentally, you're an estate agent, but you've chosen the different paths along the way. Thank you, Kirk, my friend. I'm very, very happy to have chatted with you, and I appreciate the fact that you've spent some time with us today.
Michael, absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting me along.
Bye for now.
Thanks.